So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. And Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who was journeying with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. For their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At this time the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. This is where our story begins, not with a dramatic external threat, but with an internal family conflict over resources. Success and blessing had created a problem. There wasn't enough pastureland for both Abraham's and Lot's enormous herds. Their herdsmen were arguing, and tension was building. Notice the setting: they were back at Bethel, where Abraham had previously built an altar to God. This geographical detail is crucial because it shows Abraham returning to his spiritual roots before dealing with the practical problem. A pro tip for handling our own conflicts: we must first return to our place of worship before we can properly resolve our disputes. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right, or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." This is one of the most remarkable displays of faith and generosity in all of Scripture. As the elder and the one through whom God's covenant promises flowed, Abraham had every right to claim the best land for himself. Instead, he took the humble position and let Lot choose first. Abraham understood that true peace was more valuable than prime pastureland. He trusted that God would bless him regardless of which land he ended up with. This reveals an insider secret about spiritual maturity. When you truly believe God is your provider, you don't need to fight for your rights. You can afford to be generous because you know your blessing comes from God, not from your circumstances. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Lot made his decision based entirely on what he could see. The text says he lifted up his eyes and saw. He evaluated with natural vision, not spiritual discernment. The Jordan Valley looked like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, both powerful comparisons. But the Garden of Eden had been lost through sin, and Egypt represented the world system that had just afflicted them. Lot was drawn by appearances, by immediate advantage, by what promised the easiest and most prosperous life. The text adds a chilling detail. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The original audience reading this would have gasped at Lot's choice, knowing what was coming. Lot pitched his tent toward Sodom, moving gradually closer to what would become the epicenter of God's judgment. A common mistake we make is choosing our direction in life based solely on external appearances without considering the spiritual environment. We take the job with the highest salary without considering the moral compromise it might require. We choose relationships based on attraction without considering spiritual compatibility. We make decisions based on immediate gratification without considering long-term consequences. Lot's choice teaches us that what looks like the best option may actually be the most dangerous. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Bible doesn't mince words about Sodom's condition. Yet Lot saw the well-watered plains and either ignored the spiritual danger or believed he could handle it. This is the deception of worldly thinking. We believe we're strong enough to resist negative influences, but Scripture warns us that bad company corrupts good character. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Notice the contrast. Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, the land God had promised him. Lot settled among the cities and moved his tent as far as Sodom. He was gradually drawn into the very heart of corruption. The Lord said to Abraham after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring can also be counted. Rise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you." What beautiful timing! After Abraham demonstrated faith and generosity by letting Lot choose first, God reaffirmed and expanded his promise. Abraham didn't lose by being generous, he gained far more than he could have imagined. While Lot was grasping for a portion of the land, God promised Abraham all of it. This reveals a profound spiritual principle. When we trust God enough to be generous with others, He blesses us beyond what we could have secured for ourselves. Then Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Abraham's response to God's renewed promise was worship. He built another altar, maintaining his intimate relationship with God regardless of his circumstances. So what are the moral lessons we can learn from Abraham and Lot's separation? First, peace with others is more valuable than possessing the best resources. Abraham prioritized relationship over real estate. Second, our choices should be guided by spiritual discernment, not just by what looks advantageous from a worldly perspective. Lot chose with his eyes, Abraham trusted God's promise. Third, gradual compromise can lead to complete spiritual disaster. Lot pitched his tent towards Sodom before eventually living in it. And finally, generosity rooted in faith always leads to greater blessing. Abraham gave up the right to choose first, and God gave him everything. The story of Abraham and Lot's separation challenges us to examine our own decision-making process. Are we, like Lot, choosing based on immediate visible advantage, or are we, like Abraham, making choices based on faith in God's promises, even when it means temporary disadvantage? If this exploration of one of the Bible's most practical stories has given you wisdom for making godly choices in your own relationships and decisions, please like and subscribe to this channel.